This is a pretty thoughtful op-ed you've written about what Labor needs to change. What do you think needs to be the number one priority?
I think the first thing, Annalise, is to recognise that this is not just an isolated issue, a few bad apples. This is a culture that spans the whole party, and I've described it in the Guardian op-ed you mentioned as the factional culture. There's nothing wrong with factions in principle, but the way the factions operate now, it stifles debate, discourages people from joining the party, the people who make the party energetic and who turn out to, hand out how to vote cards, who can turn a marginal seat into a safe seat just by their work on the ground. All of that, parties obviously they need MPs, thoughtful, intelligent, decent people, but they also need ordinary members. And we just haven't been paying any attention to those ordinary members for years. And that absolutely has to change. There needs to be a change right across the board in the Victorian ALP and probably nationally.
There is that risk that many moot about giving too much power to the rank and file, of things then veering too far to the left and making you unelectable. It's what we saw happen in the United Kingdom with Jeremy Corbyn. What do you think is the solution to that issue?
Look, I think both sides, if you divide the party into ordinary members and MPs, that's a simplistic division in a way, and leaders of the party, I think both sides have to give. I think the way we pre-select candidates now is not just wrong. I think it's actually, we don't get the best candidates through the ways that we pre-select people for Parliament. But on the other hand, I think it's legitimate for the MPs ultimately to have the say about the policies they take to the people, because they live or die based on those policies. So, while I think absolutely the rank and file, the members should be able to lobby and have their say, MPs must take a program that they can get elected on that also is deeply principled. So yes, look, what I would like to see is a party that has ideas being debated and people who come from across the centre and centre-left and left spectrum, so that it's not controlled by one side of the party, and that those ideas are actually thrashed out in public. You never want to romanticise the past, but I do think that in the past the Labor Party used to have big, open, vigorous debates about policy. I don't think the public are scared of that. I think it's something we've stopped doing that we need to restore.
There is that issue, though, when you say that there is a division on so many key policy issues in the Labor Party. We saw it so clearly at the last election that you've got one part of the party appealing to very well-educated inner-city Australians, and then the other part appealing to working-class Australians who want their union representation, they want their paychecks guaranteed at the same form, the award wage of whatever they've been earning before. So how do you reconcile those two really different priorities?
This is obviously a massive issue for the ALP. As you say, the two sides of the party traditionally have been the progressive, largely inner city left, and the more traditional base of the ALP, the working class and low income base of the party. That's what we need to be thinking about. How do we bring those two sides together? And there are people who have proposed ideas around that. I mentioned in that article a proposal by a former Labor speechwriter, Nick Dyrenforth, to actually create a quota of MPs coming from working class and low income backgrounds. Now, that's not it's an unformed idea at this stage, but they're the sort of things that we need to be debating, and there might be many other ways to bring those two sides of the party together. But they're the things that need to be debated publicly within a party that is committed to openness, to transparency, and to democracy, internally as well as externally.
Just on that idea of having a quota of working class people or people from a working class background, how would you define that? If your parents were working class and then you had a really great job with a high income, would that make you working class, or is there an income threshold? Yeah,
it's a great question. I don't have the answers to that. It's just, I suppose, an example of the sort of discussions that need to be had within the ALP. I mean, I think a very small idea would be twinning branches across different parts of the country. So an inner city branch might twin with a branch in a region, and say, well, what can we discuss together? How can we work together? I suppose I'm just raising that, Annalise, to talk about the sort of ideas that Labor needs to be discussing, just because this issue is so... If you go back to the last election, both to the review that was conducted into the party's defeat and also into the comments of many people, many leaders inside the party, they've all pointed to this problem and the loss of connection, Labor's loss of connection with its traditional base. So we need to be thinking about that. And part of that, it's not the whole answer, but part of that is making the party a place where people feel they can have a role. As I say, there's more to be done, and ultimately it's about the policies that you take to an election. But that internal democracy element, I definitely think, is part of the mix for Labor.